Fanfic Corner, presented by Animal Girl. Love Beneath the Moon, Chapter 2, Royal Wedding, written and read by Animal Girl. Okay, now, if you have not yet seen my video on Love Beneath the Moon, Chapter 1, Peace Talks, I recommend that you go check that video out now and then come back to this one, as this is a follow-up to that chapter. The next day, all the delegates were informed that Callum and Rayla were the ones chosen to seal the treaty with their marriage. It was agreed that they were the best choice, since not only were they the ones who returned Zym to his mother, but Callum was also a prince. But it also opened up a lot of arguing. The elves wanted a traditional Xadian wedding, but the humans wanted a traditional royal wedding, since Callum was a prince and Rayla would be a princess once she became Callum's wife. Neither side is willing to budge, Jane said when she, Ruan, General Maya, and Commander Gren met with Callum and Rayla when the delegates took a break for lunch. The elves want a Xadian wedding. The humans want a royal wedding, Ruan said. It's a big mess. It's like this marriage was suggested just to cause arguments, Commander Gren translated for General Maya. Could these help? Callum asked, passing several pieces of paper to his aunt. What are they? Commander Gren asked as Amaya took the papers. It's what we want for our wedding, Rayla said. The pictures depicted a seamless blend of a Xadian and a royal wedding. All the important aspects were there. The ceremony was depicted in the royal gardens as Xadian tradition dictated, with elements from each of the 5 kingdoms, as was part of a traditional royal wedding. While the reception was depicted with all the traditional elements of a royal wedding, with flowers and gemstones incorporated as per Xadian tradition. Even the gown Rayla wanted to wear incorporated both cultures. This is just what we needed, Ruan said. No one can argue over these when both traditions are being represented. When the talks resumed after lunch, the first topic was the wedding. And almost immediately, the arguing started. A piercing whistle sounded, getting everyone's attention. This is how the wedding will be, Ruan said as Callum's sketches were distributed among the delegates. What's this? One asked. It's what Callum and Rayla want for their wedding, Jane said. They're not old enough to know what they want for a wedding, another delegate said. They're old enough to be getting married, Commander Gren translated for General Maya. They know what they like, and it is their wedding. Besides, their ideas combine the elements of a traditional royal wedding and a traditional Xadian wedding, so both sides should be happy. The delegates talked amongst themselves. Finally, they agreed that the wedding would proceed following Callum and Rayla's plans. The talks moved on to other matters, such as trade routes, and border disputes. Why didn't you tell me you and Rayla were getting married? Ezren asked as he and Callum got ready for the banquet that night. We were going to wait to announce our engagement until after peace was secured, Callum told his brother. This just kind of sped things up. So when do you think the wedding will take place? If the delegates agree, my guess is before the end of summer. Now come on, the banquet's about to start and we still have to meet Rayla. The princes left their room to find Rayla leaving hers. Tonight she was wearing a sparkly white top with a flowing black skirt and low black heels. Her hair was done up in an elaborate braid accented with jeweled flowers, and she had on the same opal jewelry she had worn the night of the welcome banquet. You look really beautiful, Callum said. Rayla looked away, her cheeks a rosy color, and not from her blush. Callum took her hand and led her down the hallway towards the banquet hall. Ezren followed behind them. Tell me this isn't what it's going to be like when you two get married, he said. They entered the banquet hall to find everyone else already there. The head of the Xadian delegates came up to them. "There you are. We've been waiting for you," he said. He quickly guided Callum and Rayla into the banquet hall, leaving Ezren to follow. "The guests of honor have arrived," he said. "Guests of honor?" Callum and Rayla said together. "Of course. This is your engagement party." Rayla and Callum looked at each other. An engagement party? They were hoping to just spend a few hours at the banquet and then go off to the gardens to walk in the moonlight and talk. Now there was no way that they could leave. Of course, they knew this was going to happen sooner or later. It was best to get the engagement party out of the way. The young couple was whisked away into the crowd of people waiting to congratulate them and ask them questions about their upcoming wedding and their plans for the future. Several days later, Rayla hated fittings. It took forever, and the seamstress was always pulling or straightening something. She didn't even know why she had to be fitted for her wedding dress. The royal seamstress had done a wonderful job at getting the fit just right for the dresses and gowns Rayla had worn to the banquets, parties, and dinners she had attended with Callum and Ezren since arriving in Katolis without fittings. "It won't be that much longer," Lujane said, correctly interpreting the frustrated look on Rayla's face. "You want your gown to be perfect for your wedding, don't you?" "I do," Rayla said. "I just hate standing around doing nothing." Once the seamstress was done, Rayla changed out of her gown and back into her regular clothes. "Something else is bothering you, isn't it?" Lujane said as the seamstress left Rayla's room. "It's just... the other day, when I was looking for Callum after his sword training, I accidentally overheard something," Rayla said. "Ophelia was talking with one of the High Council members, and she was saying how this time next year there would be a new royal baby in the palace. I don't think I'm ready to have children yet. I want Callum to myself for a little while first." "I think I can help you with that." Lujane took Rayla to her room in the guest wing. Once there, she took out a necklace with a glittering stone on it. "Here, put this on," she told Rayla. "That's not one of your moonstones, like the one you gave to Ava, is it?" Rayla asked. "No, this is a runestone," Lujane said as she fastened the necklace around Rayla's neck. "Runestones hold ancient magic. This one will prevent you from becoming pregnant. Once you and Callum decide you're ready to start a family, you can take it off." Rayla held the runestone in her hand and looked at it. "How did you get one of these?" she asked. "All elf maidens are giving one when they come of age," Lujane said. "I'm actually surprised your parents didn't give you one." Rayla looked away. She hated talking about her parents. When she was younger, they had no time for her, and when they became members of the Dragon Guard, they had left her with Ruran and hadn't even bothered to keep in touch. Ruran was the closest thing she had to a parent. He had raised her since she was 10 and taught her sword fighting, archery, hand-to-hand combat, survival skills, and some magic. He had even taught her about humans, and she didn't blame him for not knowing that everything the elves thought they had known about humans wasn't true. When she had sent a letter to her parents after the second day of the peace talks, telling them that she was getting married, they hadn't even bothered to reply. She knew they had gotten it because Ruran had used a messenger arrow to send it. She had thought they would want to at least know who she was marrying and know that she wouldn't be returning to Xadia since she would be living at the palace. "What's wrong?" Lujane asked. "It's nothing," Rayla said as she tucked the runestone into her shirt. "I have to go. I promised Callum I would meet him in the library after my fitting." "What's the surprise you want to show me?" Rayla asked as Callum led her through one of the towers. "If I told you, it wouldn't be a surprise," Callum said. Once at the top of the tower, Callum led Rayla out onto one of the balconies. It overlooked the nearby forest, and a table was set up for a candlelight dinner for two. With the sun setting and the sky streaked with yellow, orange, and pink, with just a hint of twilight violet and blue, it was extremely romantic. "I know you're not used to all the dinners and parties we had to attend, so I talked with Anna-Maya, and she agreed we could have dinner out here tonight. Just the two of us," Callum said as Rayla took in the scene before her. Callum, this was so thoughtful, Rayla said. Callum pulled out one of the chairs for her before taking his own seat. So what are we having for dinner? Rayla asked as Callum lifted one of the 2 metal coverings on the table. Roast beef with potatoes and greens and a Xadian fruit salad, Callum answered. And for dessert, moonberry cake, Rayla said when the second cover was removed. My favorite. The 2 talked during dinner about everything and nothing, simply enjoying the other's company. They told each other stories about their childhoods and talked about the plans for their wedding, which was only 3 weeks away. I almost forgot, Callum said during dessert. This came for you today. He handed Rayla a letter. It's from my parents, she said excitedly as she broke the seal. So what do they say? Callum asked. Are they going to make it in time for the Rayla, what's wrong? Rayla's face fell as she read the letter. They're not coming, she said. They're not? Callum asked in disbelief. They said they had more important things to do. Callum had never seen Rayla look so upset, and he could honestly understand. She was getting married, and her parents weren't coming. True, his weren't either, but he knew that if they were alive, they would be there. Rayla never wanted to talk about her parents, so Callum decided that tomorrow he would talk to the only one he knew would be able to tell him what was going on between Rayla and her parents besides her. Ruan. Ruan, can I talk to you for a minute? Callum asked the Moonshadow elf when the delegates took a break for the morning. Is there a problem? Ruan asked. I'm not sure. Do you know anything about Rayla and her parents? Quite a bit. Did something happen? Rayla got a letter from them yesterday saying they weren't coming to the wedding because they had more important things to do. She never wants to talk about her parents, but I want to help her, and I can't if I don't know what's going on. It's complicated, but basically Lunaria and Sombra never wanted her. Let me talk to her. I may be able to help. Rayla didn't look up when she heard someone approach the stall. She just kept stroking Moonglow. She found comfort in visiting her new horse, and better understood the connection Ezren had with Bait, Ellis had with Ava, and Lujane had with Fifi. Callum told me what happened, Ruan said. I don't know why I'm so upset, Rayla said without turning around. She didn't want Ruan to see she had been crying. They never had time for me. My parents don't love me. Your parents do love you. They have a funny way of showing it. Rayla, there's something you need to know. Rayla turned away from Moonglow and looked right at Ruan. What is it? She asked. Lunaria and Sombra aren't your parents, Ruan said. What do you mean? Ruan came up to her and lifted her chin. Your mother was a powerful moon mage, and your father trained to be a warrior, he said. In fact, it was because of him you met Callum in the first place. You mean, Rayla started. Yes, Rayla. I'm your father. After your mother died, the elders decided it would be better if Lunaria and Sombra raised you. They thought you would be better off with your aunt and uncle than with just me. Why didn't you tell me before now? Remember when you told me that you could never find the right time to tell Callum and Ezra about King Harrow, and every time you thought you did, it was difficult to find the words because you didn't want to hurt them? It was like that. When you were younger, I didn't want you to think I abandoned you, because I didn't. If I could have kept you with me, I would have. And when you got older, it became harder. Rayla threw her arms around Rian, for the first time giving not her mentor, but her father a big hug. Tears ran down her cheeks, but this time they were tears of happiness. I'm so glad you told me, she said, and I want to hear all about my mother. Once the wedding is over, we'll set aside some time and I'll tell you everything I can about her, Ruan said. The delegates have decided that in the interest of trust and friendship, there will be an exchange. 1 warrior and 1 mage from each of the 5 human kingdoms will spend a year in Xadia, with an additional warrior and mage keeping an eye on them, while 1 warrior and 1 mage from 5 of the 6 elf clans will spend a year in Katolis, with a warrior and mage from the 6th clan keeping an eye on them. I've volunteered to be the one to supervise the elven warriors, so I'll be here for an entire year. We'll have plenty of time to talk about your mother. Can you tell me one thing, though? What was she like? She was a lot like you. One day before the wedding, the castle was a beehive of activity. In just 24 hours, a royal wedding would take place. Following both Xadian and royal tradition, Rayla and Callum weren't allowed to see each other. That morning after breakfast, most of Callum's things were moved across the hall to Rayla's room, which would become his room as well after the wedding. To make sure the bride and groom didn't see each other, Rayla was staying in Lujane's room in the guest wing for the night, and the moon mage was keeping a close eye on her, while Ruan was keeping a close eye on Callum. The wedding's tomorrow, Ruan said as he and Callum rode their horses through the forest. Are you ready? Yes, a little nervous too. I was nervous when I married Rayla's mother. Just remember, you and Rayla love each other. It's not getting married I'm nervous about. It's the wedding night? Callum nodded, his face turning red. Did you ever talk to your stepfather about it? We had the talk a few years ago, but that was about it. Ruan smiled at his soon-to-be son-in-law. I can tell you what I remember from when Rayla's mother and I were married. Meanwhile, back at the castle, Rayla was having her final fitting for her wedding dress. As the seamstress put the final touches on, Rayla went through her mental checklist. The royal gardens was all set for the ceremony. The banquet hall was decorated for the reception, and the guests had arrived, and her dress was done. You look so beautiful, Rayla, Lujane said as the seamstress left to make the final adjustments to Rayla's dress. Rayla pulled her boots on without responding. She had a lot on her mind. It did, however, feel good to have Lujane's support. She couldn't remember having the support of an adult female before. In fact, she couldn't remember having a strong female role model before. Now she had 2, since she was also becoming close with General Amaya. Lujane sat on the bed next to Rayla and brushed a strand of hair out of the younger elf's eyes. Tomorrow you'll be a married woman, Lujane said. I don't think I could be any happier for you or prouder if you were my daughter. Thank you, Rayla said. It means a lot. I'm so excited, but also nervous. You have every right to be nervous. You're not only getting married, you're becoming a princess. The first elven princess in the human kingdoms. It's not the wedding or becoming a princess that I'm nervous about. Didn't your mother talk to you about this? Lujane asked when Rayla's cheeks turned a deep scarlet. My mother died when I was really young, and my aunt never had any time for me. Well, I've been married a few times, so I can give you some advice. The next day, the castle was even busier than it was the day before. Everything had to be just perfect for the royal wedding. Representatives from all over Xadia had arrived, as well as those from the other 4 human kingdoms. Even the kings and queens from the other 4 kingdoms were there, with their families, and Zym and his mother had come along with the dragon that Callum and Rayla had risked everything to help. Though Soren and Claudia were keeping their distance from her, since she still hadn't completely forgiven them for what they did to her. You look really beautiful, Rayla, Alice said as she, Lujane, and Claudia helped Rayla get ready. Just like a princess. Well, she is going to be a princess after the ceremony, Claudia said as she put the finishing touches on Rayla's hair. Rayla looked at herself in the mirror. She had to agree with Alice. She did look like a princess. Following the traditions of the Panarchy, her strapless A-line dress was the purest white, but it was accented with pale blue, the color brides wore in Xadia. Following Xadian tradition, amethysts and moonstones, the stones of the Moonshadow elves, were stitched into the hem, the collar, and the waist, along with pearls, and about half a dozen pearl buttons were down her back. The door to the room opened, and General Maya came in, wearing her best dress uniform. She came up to Rayla and fastened the most beautiful lace veil Rayla had ever seen to her hair, just behind her horns. "This belonged to my sister," she signed as Jane placed a crown of jeweled flowers on Rayla's head. "She wore it when she married Callum's father, and then again when she married Harrow. She would be honored to see her daughter-in-law wear it on her wedding." The ceremony flew by, or at least it seemed that way to Rayla and Callum. They barely heard the officiant or even noticed the guests. They were far too busy focusing on each other. Once the officiant was done, Rayla and Callum exchanged their vows and rings. The officiant then declared them husband and wife, and they kissed, ending the ceremony. The reception followed soon after. Food from all over the Panarchy was served, as well as delicacies from Xadia. For dessert, the baker had made all kinds of wonderful pastries and a beautiful moonberry wedding cake. Music and dancing soon followed, and everyone was intermingling. Most of the guests would be returning home in the morning, but Callum and Rayla were happy that Alice, Ava, Zym, and his mother were going to be staying for a week. It was a comfort to know that Ezren wouldn't be alone while they were away on their honeymoon. Also, Queen Anaya from Durn had decided to stay for a short visit to pass on what she had learned about being a child ruler to Ezren. It was late by the time everyone retired to their rooms. Once inside their room, Rayla and Callum began to kiss. With the door securely locked, they were safe from being interrupted. Not that they would be, since all the adults knew what was going to happen. "Are you ready for this?" Callum asked Rayla between kisses. "As ready as I'll ever be," Rayla said as Callum's hands moved down her back and undid the buttons on her dress. Still kissing, Callum scooped Rayla up in his arms and carried her to the bed. This was going to be a night neither of them was going to forget. Okay, first off, I think this was probably one of the longest chapters I've ever written, if not the longest. But I did have a lot of things I wanted to cover in this chapter. Let me know what you thought of that little twist I threw in there. And for those of you curious about what happened to Rayla's mother, that will be in the next chapter. I had planned on putting in this chapter, but there was just so much that I felt it could be dedicated to a chapter of its own. Also, nothing inappropriate will ever happen in any of my stories. I may lead up to it or follow up on it, but that'll be about it. Okay, also, if you'd like to read this chapter or the previous chapter or any following chapters of the story or any of my other fanfics, you can check them out on my Wattpad page. I will have the link for that in the description section. I also post them to Facebook, Tumblr, and DeviantArt as well. Also, if you have a fanfic you would like me to read on Fanfic Corner, or you know someone who has a fanfic that they would like me to read on Fanfic Corner, you can feel free to send it to me at either my Tumblr account or my Facebook page. I will have the link for those two sections or those two sites in the description section. A couple of things for submitting a fanfic, though. First off, please be sure to include your name or the name of the author when you send the fanfic. If I can't credit the author, I will not do a reading. Secondly, if it is long, I will be dividing it up into videos. My camcorder only records up to 33 minutes. So I do like to keep these videos short. Third, please try to keep it clean. I will clean up or gloss over any parts or words that I think are inappropriate. but if there's too much, I just will not do a reading. Lastly, and this one is the most important of all, please be honest. If I learn that a fanfic was submitted by someone without the author's permission, I will not only remove that video and any other videos that correspond with it from my YouTube channel, but I will also no longer be accepting, I also will no longer accept videos, or fanfics, excuse me, from that sender.